Please just try one more time." The boy's hands trembled as he stared at the page. The letters twisted and danced before his eyes, forming shapes that made no sense. His tutor, the fourth one this year, leaned forward with barely concealed frustration. "Noah, you're 10 years old. These are second-grade words." Noah Harrington swallowed hard, his throat tight. He wanted to run. He wanted to disappear. But his father was watching from the doorway, arms crossed, expression unreadable. The tutor sighed and closed the book. "Mr. Harrington, I've done everything I can. He's simply not responding to traditional methods." "That's enough." David Harrington's voice was quiet but firm. "You can see yourself out." When the door clicked shut, the silence became suffocating. Noah kept his eyes on the carpet, counting the threads in the Persian rug, anything to avoid his father's gaze. "How many does this make?" David asked. "4," Noah whispered. "4 tutors in 6 months. Do you understand what that means?" Noah nodded, even though he didn't, not really. He just knew he was failing, again. David ran a hand through his hair, exhaling slowly. "We'll try again next week. But Noah, you have to meet them halfway. You have to try." "I am trying," Noah said, his voice cracking. David paused at the door. For a moment it looked like he might say something else, something softer, but he didn't. He just walked away, his footsteps echoing down the marble hallway. Noah sat alone in the study, surrounded by shelves full of books he couldn't read, wondering what was wrong with him. From behind the tall bookcase, Iris Caldwell had been dusting the upper shelves. She hadn't meant to witness the moment, but now she couldn't unknow what she'd seen. The boy's shoulders were hunched, his small frame folding inward like he wanted to vanish. She recognized that posture. She'd worn it herself years ago. Iris had been working at the Harrington estate for 3 weeks. She cleaned quietly, kept her head down, and tried not to get attached to the family drama that unfolded in the grand rooms she polished. The estate was massive, gardens that stretched for acres, a fountain in the circular driveway, windows so tall they seemed to touch the sky. She was hired to clean, nothing more. Mrs. Pemberton, the head housekeeper, had been clear. "Mr. Harrington values privacy and precision. You do your work quietly and you'll do fine here." Iris nodded. She'd worked in homes like this before, wealthy families who needed help but didn't want to see the people providing it. That was fine by her. But Noah was different. On her second day, she'd found him sitting on the floor of the sunroom, surrounded by picture books, not reading them, just staring at the covers like they held secrets he couldn't access. "Good morning," Iris had said gently, pushing her cleaning cart past him. He looked up. His eyes were soft, brown, and tired, too tired for a 10-year-old. "Morning," he mumbled. She noticed the book in his lap, a children's novel with bright illustrations, the kind most kids his age devoured in a single afternoon. But Noah wasn't reading it. He was tracing the letters with his finger, slowly, methodically, like he was trying to decode a foreign language. Iris didn't say anything. She just kept dusting, moving quietly around the room. But she watched. Over the next few weeks, she began to see the pattern. Noah had tutors, lots of them. They came and went like shifting seasons, each one confident at first, then frustrated, then gone. She heard the arguments through closed doors. "He's not trying. He's distracted. Maybe he's just not capable." But Iris saw something different. She saw a boy who desperately wanted to understand, who sat with books for hours, even when they made him feel stupid, who listened when people read aloud, his eyes sharp and focused, absorbing every word. He wasn't lazy. He wasn't incapable. He was lost. One afternoon, after another tutor had packed her bags and left, Iris found Noah in the garden. He was sitting under a magnolia tree, holding a comic book upside down, pretending to read. She sat on the stone bench nearby, quiet. After a long moment, he spoke. "Do you think I'm stupid?" Iris's chest tightened. "No, I don't. Everyone else does." "Then everyone else is wrong." He looked at her, surprised by the certainty in her voice. "You know what I think," Iris said gently. "I think your brain is brilliant. It just sees the world differently than other people expect." "What does that mean?" "It means the way people are trying to teach you might not be the way you need to learn." Noah frowned. "How do you know?" "Because I used to know someone just like you." She didn't tell him it was her younger sister, Lily. That Lily had struggled with reading all through elementary school. That teachers had called her slow, unmotivated, hopeless. It wasn't until a school counselor suggested testing that they discovered the truth. Dyslexia. Lily's brain wasn't broken. It was wired differently. And once she learned strategies that worked with her brain instead of against it, everything changed. Iris had watched her sister transform from a girl who hid books under her bed in shame to a teenager who read 3 novels a week, her confidence blooming like wildflowers after rain. Looking at Noah now, she saw the same struggle in his eyes, the same quiet desperation. That evening after the house went dark, Iris sat in her small room above the garage and researched dyslexia. She read articles, watched videos, cross-referenced symptoms. Everything pointed to the same conclusion. Noah wasn't failing because he was incapable. He was failing because no one had given him the right tools. By morning, she had a plan. 2 days later, Iris found Noah sitting on the back porch, staring at a book he couldn't read. "Mind if I sit?" she asked gently. He shrugged. She sat beside him, quiet for a moment. Then she reached into her apron pocket and pulled out a small stack of colored index cards. "I want to try something with you," she said. "No pressure, just an experiment." Noah looked at the cards warily. "What kind of experiment?" "A way of seeing words differently." She held up the first card. On it, she'd drawn a simple sun with rays stretching outward. Beneath the image, in clear block letters, she'd written, "Sun." "Don't look at the letters yet," she said. "Just look at the picture. What do you see?" "A sun." "Good, now look at the word. S-U-N, your brain already knows what it means. The letters are just catching up." She moved to the next card. "A tree, tall and green." "Tree," Noah said. "T-R-E, tree." His eyes widened slightly. They worked through the stack together. Iris didn't rush him. She didn't correct him harshly. She just let him connect the images to the sounds to the shapes. When they finished, Noah looked at her with something she hadn't seen before. "Hope. Can we do more?" he asked quietly. Iris smiled. "Absolutely. If stories like this matter to you, stay with us." Over the next 2 weeks, they met in secret. Early mornings before David woke, late afternoons in the garden, quiet corners of the house where no one would interrupt. Iris taught Noah using colors, patterns, and movement. She let him trace letters in sand, build words with blocks, and read aloud without fear of judgment. She made reading tactile, physical, real. And slowly, something remarkable happened. Noah began to understand. He started recognizing patterns, decoding words, reading short sentences without stumbling. His confidence grew with every small victory. But Iris knew this couldn't stay hidden forever. One evening, as she was clearing the dinner dishes, David called her into his office. Her stomach dropped. "Miss Caldwell," he said, not looking up from his desk, "I've been told you've been spending time with my son." Iris stood tall. "Yes, sir." "Why?" She chose her words carefully. "Because he asked me to help him." David finally looked at her. His expression was unreadable. "And what makes you qualified to teach him?" "I'm not qualified," she admitted. "But I know what it's like to watch someone struggle when they're trying their hardest. And I think Noah deserves someone who sees that. David's jaw tightened. I appreciate your concern, but Noah's education is not your responsibility. With respect, Mr. Harrington, it's not about responsibility. It's about seeing him. The room went silent. David leaned back in his chair, studying her. What exactly have you been doing with him? Helping him connect words to meaning using pictures, movement, and patterns. He's not struggling because he's incapable. He's struggling because he learns differently. David frowned. You think he has a learning disability? I think he deserves to be properly evaluated. For a long moment, David said nothing. Then he stood and walked to the window, hands clasped behind his back. If you're wrong, he said quietly, you'll have given him false hope. And if I'm right, Iris replied, you'll have given him a future. David turned to face her. 1 month, he said. I'll have him tested by a specialist, but if this turns out to be nothing, it won't be. He nodded slowly. You're dismissed. Iris left the office, her hands shaking but her resolve firm. She'd crossed a line, and there was no going back. The evaluation took place on a Thursday morning. A specialist from Boston arrived with a briefcase full of assessments, puzzles, and diagnostic tools. Noah sat at the dining table, nervous but determined, while David watched from across the room. Iris wasn't allowed to stay. She spent the morning cleaning rooms she'd already cleaned twice, her mind racing with worry. What if she was wrong? What if she'd made everything worse? 3 hours later, the specialist emerged. David met her in the hallway. Iris, adjusting a picture frame nearby, strained to hear. Mr. Harrington, the woman said gently, your son has moderate to severe dyslexia. David's face went blank. But he's also exceptionally intelligent, she continued. His verbal reasoning and problem-solving scores are in the 95th percentile. Traditional reading methods will never work for him. He needs specialized, multisensory instruction. David nodded slowly, processing. There are programs, the woman said. Schools that focus specifically on students with dyslexia. With the right support, he won't just catch up, he'll excel. When the specialist left, David stood in the hallway for a long time, motionless. Then he turned and saw Iris. You were right, he said quietly. Iris exhaled, relief flooding through her. I'm glad he'll get the help he needs. David looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time since she'd started working there. How did you know? He asked. Because I've watched people give up on kids like him before, and I wasn't going to let that happen again. David's expression softened just slightly. Thank you. It was the first time he'd ever said those words to her. But gratitude didn't mean trust. Over the next week, David threw himself into research. He consulted experts, visited specialized schools, and interviewed tutors trained in Orton Gillingham and Wilson reading methods. He was methodical, thorough, determined to give Noah the best possible support now that he understood the problem. But in his urgency to fix things, he made a critical mistake. He forgot to ask Noah what he wanted. One evening at dinner, David made an announcement. Noah, I've enrolled you in the Berkshire Academy. It's a boarding school in Massachusetts that specializes in students with dyslexia. You'll start in 2 weeks. Noah's fork clattered to his plate. Boarding school. It's the best in the country, David explained. You'll get individualized instruction, small class sizes, everything you need to succeed. But I'll have to leave. During the week, yes, you'll come home on weekends. Noah's eyes filled with panic. What about Iris? David hesitated. Iris has her own responsibilities here. The school has trained professionals who... I don't want to go. Noah, this is what's best. How do you know what's best? Noah's voice cracked. You didn't even know I had dyslexia until 2 weeks ago. The words hung in the air like smoke. David's face hardened. "We'll discuss this later." But Noah pushed back from the table and ran upstairs, tears streaming down his face. That night, Noah knocked on Iris's door above the garage. She opened it to find him standing there in his pajamas, eyes red and swollen. "Can we talk?" he whispered. She let him in, closing the door quietly behind him. "He's sending me away," Noah said, his voice breaking. "I know. I don't want to go." Iris knelt down to his level. "I know that too. Why can't you just keep teaching me?" "Because your dad wants to give you the best possible education, and I'm not trained the way those teachers are. But you helped me when no one else could." Iris felt her throat tighten. "And I'll keep helping you no matter where you are. Promise. Promise." He hugged her tightly, and she held him, feeling the weight of every broken promise she'd ever witnessed in her life, determined not to add another. The next morning, Iris made a decision. She knocked on David's office door before breakfast. "Mr. Harrington, may I speak with you?" He gestured for her to sit. "I know you're doing what you think is right for Noah," Iris began carefully, "but I need you to consider something." David folded his hands. "Go on." "Noah doesn't just need specialized instruction. He needs someone who believes in him, someone who doesn't see him as a problem to solve." "And you think that's you?" "I think it could be, if you'll let me try." David frowned. "You're a housekeeper, Miss Caldwell, not an educator." "No, but I'm someone who sees your son, and right now that might matter more than credentials." "What exactly are you proposing?" "Let me get trained. I'll enroll in courses on dyslexia intervention. I'll study the Orton-Gillingham method, Wilson reading, whatever it takes, but please don't send him away." David stared at her for a long moment. "And if it doesn't work?" "Then I'll step aside, but give me 1 semester to prove it can." David leaned back in his chair, considering. 1 semester, he finally said. If his reading doesn't improve significantly by Christmas, he goes to Berkshire. Iris nodded. Deal. The next 6 months were the hardest of Iris's life. She enrolled in intensive online courses on structured literacy and multisensory instruction. She studied late into the night, learning about phonological awareness, orthographic mapping, and morphology. She became certified in the Orton-Gillingham approach. And every single day, she worked with Noah. Progress was slow. There were setbacks, days when Noah wanted to quit, moments when Iris doubted herself. But she never wavered. She celebrated every small victory, every word decoded correctly, every sentence read without stumbling. And slowly, Noah began to transform. By October, he was reading at a 3rd grade level. By November, 4th grade. His teacher called David to say, "Whatever intervention you've implemented, it's remarkable. Noah is participating in class, raising his hand, even volunteering to read aloud." David sat in his office, staring at the progress reports spread across his desk. His son, who 6 months ago couldn't read a simple sentence, was now devouring chapter books. That evening, he walked to the sunroom where Iris and Noah were working. Noah was reading aloud from a middle-grade novel, his voice steady and confident. David stood in the doorway, listening. When Noah finished the chapter, Iris high-fived him. That was flawless. Noah beamed. David cleared his throat. They both looked up. "I owe you an apology," David said to Iris. She blinked, surprised. "I was so focused on fixing the problem that I didn't see what Noah actually needed." He looked at his son. "You needed someone who believed you weren't broken." Noah's eyes welled up. David knelt down. "I'm sorry I made you feel like you were failing. You weren't. I was." Noah threw his arms around his father, and David held him tight, his own eyes glistening. Iris quietly stepped back, giving them space. David didn't send Noah to boarding school. Instead, he enrolled him in a local private school with an excellent learning support program, and he hired Iris officially as Noah's educational specialist. Not a housekeeper, not a tutor, a specialist, with proper training, resources, and respect. But something else changed too. David began spending more time with Noah, reading with him before bed, asking about his day, actually listening to the answers. He learned to see his son not as someone who needed to be fixed, but as someone with unique strengths and challenges. By the end of the school year, Noah was reading at grade level. He joined the school book club. He wrote a short story that won a school-wide competition. And when the principal called to congratulate David, she said something that made him pause. Noah told me his reading specialist changed his life. He said she taught him that being different isn't the same as being broken. David sat quietly with that for a long time. On the last day of school, Noah came home with a certificate for academic achievement. He ran to find Iris in the library, where she was organizing new books for his summer reading. "Look," he shouted, waving the certificate. Iris read it, tears filling her eyes. "I'm so proud of you. I couldn't have done it without you." "Yes, you could have," she said gently. "You just needed the right tools to show everyone what you were capable of all along." David appeared in the doorway. "Iris, could I speak with you for a moment?" Noah took his certificate and ran upstairs to frame it. David stepped into the library. "I wanted to thank you," he said, "for everything you've done for my son." "He did the work," Iris replied. "No," David said firmly. "You saw him when no one else did, including me." He handed her an envelope. Inside was a contract, not for housekeeping, not even for tutoring. It was a full-time position as the director of learning support for the Harrington Foundation, a new nonprofit David was launching to help other children with learning differences access specialized education. "I want you to help other kids like Noah," David said. "Kids who are struggling not because they can't learn, but because they haven't found the right way yet." Iris stared at the contract, overwhelmed. "You don't have to answer now," David said gently, "but I hope you'll consider it." 3 months later, the Harrington Foundation opened its doors. Iris stood in the bright, welcoming learning center, watching children work with specially trained instructors using multisensory techniques. Noah was there too, volunteering as a reading buddy for younger students. "Remember," he told a first grader struggling with a book, "the letters might look funny, but that doesn't mean you're not smart. Your brain just works differently, and that's actually pretty cool." The little girl smiled. Iris watched from across the room, her heart full. David walked up beside her. "You did this," he said quietly. "We did this," Iris corrected, "all of us." Later that evening, as the center closed for the day, Noah asked Iris a question. "Do you remember when you first helped me, in the garden?" "Of course." "Why did you do it? You didn't have to." Iris knelt down to meet his eyes. "Because someone once did it for my sister, and she told me that the greatest gift you can give someone is the belief that they're capable of more than they think they are." Noah hugged her. "I'm glad you believed in me." "I always will." The greatest lessons in life aren't taught in classrooms. They're taught in moments of quiet courage, when someone chooses to see another person not as they appear, but as they could become. When we believe in someone, we don't just change their story. We help them write a new one. Thank you for staying with us until this very moment. You didn't just watch a story, you felt it. This is Nanny Grace Storytelling, where quiet acts of kindness, deep emotions, and life-changing moments are shared with honesty and heart. If this story touched you, please take a second to like the video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to the channel. Your support allows us to keep telling stories that matter, stories that heal, inspire, and stay with you long after the screen goes dark. We're grateful you're here, because sometimes all it takes is one person who refuses to give up. See you in our next video.